This video describes best practices for MLA in-text citation and how to gain more credibility from our sources using attributive tags. So first off, whenever we're working with sources, we want to be very careful of plagiarism. Anytime we are using an idea from a source that wasn't our idea, we need to make sure we cite it either by using paraphrasing, in which we've significantly changed the diction choices and the sentence structure of the original source, and still provided an in-text citation at the end of the paraphrase, or direct quoting. So make sure you're always aware of giving credit to other people's ideas. So if we are quoting the source exactly, the proper way to quote a source is we open up our parentheses, we put the author's last name and the page number, close our parentheses, and the period goes outside. If you have a source that's electronic and does not have a page number, then you just ignore that page number area of the citation and you just have the author's last name with the period outside. Note each one of these is incorrect, so you want to make sure that those look wrong to you and that these ones look right to you. Okay, so paraphrasing is usually preferable to direct quoting, as we can maintain the control of our own language and style, and it allows us to use our source more succinctly, and we don't get these kind of strange constructions that may feel cut and pasted. So it's usually better to paraphrase your source rather than to direct quote your source. And when we paraphrase, we follow the same in-text citation rules. So again, the period goes outside, we put the author's last name only with the page number, and if it's an electronic source, there's no page number. We don't use a comma, we don't put the period before the citation, we don't have any type of P or PG in there, and we don't have kind of craziness here with two periods. So it's the same guidelines as if you're direct quoting. Okay, so here are some instances in which you would want to quote. So if the quotation is from some especially notable respected authority, or if you are dealing with some sort of argument and you want to summarize what an opposing position is, or if you want to show your readers, give the readers a sense of the source's voice, especially if there's some sort of striking or pithy language. And then, of course, whenever you need to analyze exact word choice. So that could be a legal document, a literary text, a text for rhetorical analysis. Those are some of the main times in which we really need to analyze the word choice that's used by a source. Okay, here are a couple of what I call the what ifs. So what if I have two authors? Well, here's how we cite it if we have two authors. Or what if I have three authors? Okay, in that case, we wouldn't list out all three authors. We'd use this Latin phrase here, et al., which means among others, et space al period, and we just indicate the first name on the document. So the first author and then followed by et al. A very common problem that people have is, well, what happens if I don't have an author? So if we don't have an author, then we just shorten the title of the article to just a few words. So let's say you had an article that was Why Privacy Matters Even If You Have Nothing to Hide. In your parenthetical citation at the end of your sentence, you would just do why privacy. And now readers could go down to your works cited and actually see the full citation of the entire article's title. And finally, if you are quoting something that already has quote marks around it, we use the structure QTD in to indicate that line that we have in our text was originally quoted in the original source. Okay, one thing we for sure don't want to do is what's called dropping in our source material. You will see here that there is no kind of author's name or a verb here in front of the quote. We just drop in the quote and then put the parenthetical. This leads to a really clunky construction. It's not doing strong integration. And the same problem can happen with a dropped-in paraphrase. So whenever we're bringing in sources, we want to do something in front of the actual source material that smooths out the transition from your idea to the source's quote or paraphrase. And then also perhaps we can use that to, at the same time, enhance our own credibility. And so that's when we moved into using what's called attributive tags, or some sort of language, some sort of tag that attributes credibility to our sources. So When we do an attributive tag, the most basic structure is the author's name and then a verb. Okay, and I use some really ugly words here. John Doe, most basic name, says, most basic verb. The point of this slide is just to illustrate. If you're bringing in a full sentence, note we have a comma and a capital letter. And if we're just using a partial quote, usually we have some sort of connecting word like that, and then we insert the partial quote and no comma. I like to refer to this structure here as just a signal phrase, not an attributive tag. An attributive tag would be something that gives a little bit more information. So in this particular example, we have the title of the entire work, the entire essay, and the title of the actual academic journal that the author wrote in. And then we have the author's name and a verb. So you'll notice that this is much stronger than this dropped-in quote. So rather than just having this kind of clunky construction, we could write something like, in his essay titled Another View of Faulkner's Narrator in A Rose for Emily for the Southern Literature Review, Michael Burdock posits that the narrator of the story is a woman, and then we can go off and give the quote from Burdock. So this is an example of attribution, giving your source credibility. Michael Burdock here gets more credibility because you're telling your readers that he was published in this academic journal, which is a Southern Literature Review about a Southern writer. So this source is getting much more credibility. We do the same structure if we're paraphrasing. So it's kind of, I just basically paraphrased here, but used the exact same attributive tag. Okay, when we are using the attributive tags, we want to make sure that we don't repeat the author's last name again. So if you already said the author's name in your tag, there's no need to repeat it then later on. So you'll notice in these correct examples here, if we said the guy's name here, there's no need to put Jones again at the end. Or if it doesn't have a page number, notice we don't even have a parenthetical citation. If it's an electronic source and we've indicated who said it at the beginning of our sentence, there's nothing left to put in a parenthetical citation, so we just ignore that and then note the period goes inside the quotes in that scenario. Here's some verbs, not all the verbs you could use, but here are a few verbs that you could use that can be stronger verbs to connect your attributive tags. Okay, here are a few examples. I'll let you guys read through those. I'll attach the PowerPoint to this video, so you can go ahead and take a look at these different samples. I'm not going to read through them for you here. And then the remainder of the slides in this PowerPoint just give you ideas of other things besides writing the title of the article and where the article appeared. Other things that you could do in your attributive tags. So perhaps the source has some sort of specialty or some sort of credentials that somehow gives him or her more credibility. You could use a tag like that. Perhaps your source has some sort of personal connection to the issue, and you can write a tag like this. Maybe you're doing some sort of argument essay and you want to highlight that the source somehow has an inconsistent position or somehow doesn't have credentials to be speaking on it, and you could use that type of an attributive tag. In general, whenever you have a book as a source, use the title of the book. By all means, that's a very credible source. But don't just say the title of the book. Give us a little bit more about what section of the book you're looking at. So in this example here, I said the tipping point. I just didn't say all of the tipping point. I actually just talked about Gladwell's broken window theory. Or for this one with Toni Morrison, I didn't say the entire book Playing in the Dark, but rather her section on defining Africanist narrative. So those are ways that you can bring in just little details from the book that kind of give you a sense of what this quote is going to be. Clearly, this quote is going to be about the Africanist narrative, and clearly this quote is going to be about the broken window theory. So it's a nice way to kind of frame your evidence. Also note, titles of books are always italicized, so don't put quote marks around those because then people will think that's just an article, and it's in fact a book. So you're actually giving your readers misinformation there. Titles of books get italicized. Quote marks go around titles of articles. And finally, if the source is some sort of has some sort of prestige or is somehow notable. So I have here probably one of the most prestigious academic medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine. So we would indicate that here, or the Harvard Business Review blog. I'm sorry, one last one here. If you want to highlight your source's political or social views, there are ways that we could write tags around that. So again, I went through these really quickly. You can come back through and review these and look at them as models to write your own attributive tags. But these are just some other ideas. By all means, they are not the only ways you can bring in your source's credibility, but just some other ways to get you thinking about how you could create some sort of statement in before you give your source material that provides credibility to the source. That's it. As always, if you guys have questions, please let me know, and we will talk later. Thanks. Bye-bye.